Alright, how's it going people? Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're doing a Sonic games tier list. Basically we got all the mainline Sonic games right here and we're gonna rank them all from worst to best. Now keep in mind these are my opinions, which also means it's the correct opinion. So of course we got Sonic 06 right here, you can already see it right here. Sonic 06, awful game, with awful glitches, awful load times. The only reason I'm not giving this game an F is because the game had a lot of potential behind it, and the reason it turned out so broken was because Sega rushed the game out. Definitely not the worst in the list, but yeah, it's definitely not a great game either. Although it has an interesting story, and Silver is a great character, the game itself is messy. The game has one of the best Sonic soundtracks of all time, making 06 a very mixed package of a game, so I'ma just leave it here in D tier. Next up is Sonic Unleashed. Honestly, a goated game. Now, I know a lot of people are gonna get mad at me because the Hedgehog levels and the Sun and Moon medals, and I know those are very big complaints. Trust me, when playing Unleashed for the first time, I didn't appreciate them, and I still don't like the Sun and Moon medals, don't get me wrong, but low-key I think the Hedgehog is misunderstood. I personally see it as another good gameplay style. It's definitely slower than the rest of the game, and if you're not speedrunning, the stages are super long, but low-key the Hedgehog levels are kinda chill. You can do some pretty awesome combos in there, plus the music in the Hedgehog levels slap. And then we got the day stages. Oh my god, these are the best stages in any 3D Sonic game, no doubt. They're super immersive, they make you feel like you're actually Sonic boosting through these levels, and the graphics still hold up. Like for a 2008 game, this is insane. And now we got Sonic Frontiers. This is kind of a mixed game for me. There's moments in this game that are crazy hype, but then you got stuff like the cyberspace levels and the combat feeling a bit repetitive, so I'm gonna leave it at B. It's definitely one of the better Sonic games we gotten around recently, and after the mess that was Sonic Forces, I'm glad that Sonic Frontiers exists, but it seriously lacks replayability, and the cyberspace levels are just god-awful. There's some good ones, but the movement is just really bad in those levels. The open zone though, that's the highlight of the game right there, along with the boss fights. Those are perfect, those are S tier. Sadly, the cyberspace and the side missions are a large portion of the game, plus the last two islands feel a bit rushed, and Chaos Island for some reason really likes its 2D segments, so I don't know, I feel very mixed about the game. Once again, the soundtrack one of the best in the series, but as a game itself, I'm gonna leave it at B. Sonic and the Black Knight. This one is very interesting. I think it's one of the most underrated Sonic games for sure. Do I think it's good? I mean, not really. I'm gonna leave it at C. The game has some really good ideas. I like the storybook aspect, I like the sword. However, most of the gameplay is just waggling the Wiimote, which is a problem with Sonic and the Secret Rings. This is a sequel to that game, and I'm gonna talk about that game in a bit. I think it's a solid improvement from the first one, but it's nowhere near a good Sonic game. Up next is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That is an S tier right there. It took everything from the first game and leveled it up by 2. It introduced Tails for the first time, the introduction of 2 acts instead of 3, a variety of levels that are now iconic. It's very hard to think of any flaws that Sonic 2 has. The game introduced the spin dash as well. Sonic 2 is honestly a classic Sonic masterpiece and probably my favorite out of the classic games. Next up is Secret Rings, and this right here is probably my least favorite Sonic game, nearly unplayable. When I first played this game, I was a bit optimistic going into it, and the storybook aspect is great, the music is great, and the level environments are really cool, but my main problem with the game is the controls. The controls basically make the game unplayable in my opinion. A lot of the time you're trying to do something, maybe jump to a ledge, the Wii remote would just not respond to it correctly, and you gotta remember this is one of the first Nintendo Wii games, so not giving you the option to use a GameCube controller or a Pro controller, it's really odd. Enforcing broken motion controls to the player is just a very bad idea. There's games that do motion control correctly, like Mario Galaxy, or even Sonic and the Black Knight does it better. Sonic Colors, that as well. Secret Rings obviously has some good ideas going for it, but it's a game I would never like to play ever again. The music is awesome though, I think that goes for every game in here. Speaking of great music, Sonic Colors is a pretty decent game. I'm gonna put it right here in C. I enjoyed the wisps in this game. The wisps were cool. A few of them were a bit weird though, like the spike one legit just was a spin dash, and the hover could have been replaced by Tails, but otherwise the wisps were kinda cool, and the environments in this game are great. This is one of the last times Sonic Team actually tried giving new environments to the series. Sonic Colors is very creative for sure, and it's probably the best Sonic game on the Wii. However, out of the Boost games, it comes nowhere near close to Generations or Unleashed, mainly due to the 2D level design taking over. And look, I don't got anything against the 2D levels, it's just that the level design in this game was kinda whack, and some levels were just awful, like the trampoline levels. One of the main issues of this game is that the first 2 acts of each zone would be great, and then the rest would just be a lot of repetitive nonsense. Overall, making Colors a mixed bag for me. And by the way, the Wii version, a lot better than the remaster. Sonic Heroes, this one is underrated for sure. I'm gonna put it right here in B. I know the slippery controls are really odd, but I think the team mechanic is genius, and this is well complemented by the levels. It goes perfectly with the team mechanic, and it's an incredible translation of the 2D level design into this game. It feels like a classic Sonic level in 3D, and this is because of the level design. The upper paths are better, and you can take those using the fly formation, but the lower paths are a bit worse, and that's if you use the more accessible speed or strength formations. So during the levels, you're really gonna think about who you want to use, and I think that's great, that's genius. However, a lot of the levels are really whack, and the controls are super slippery. Some levels are great like Grand Metropolis or Seaside Hill, but then we got stuff like Casino Park, which is just a bunch of slippery nonsense. Also, getting the Chaos Emeralds is really annoying in this game. Plus, to see the final story, you gotta beat the game like 4 times, and that's quite annoying. At least least that's not as bad as Shadow the Hedgehog's 10 times, but that's for a little bit later. Sonic Heroes, kind of a mixed bag for me, but I think it's better than Colors, and it's definitely one of the most underrated Sonic games out here. Sonic Lost World, this one is super bland. I'm gonna put it right here in C. I can barely remember anything about this game. This game is so bland, especially coming out the heels of Sonic Generations and Colors. It's not a bad game or anything, but it tries so hard to be like Mario Galaxy or New Super Mario Bros. However, the Zelda and Yoshi DLC are pretty cool though, I'll give you that. Also, why is Sabak in like every Sonic game now? Sonic Forces, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. I think it's good right here in C. The level designs are uninspired. Classic Sonic feels awful in this game, plus he has no reason to be here. The story is awful. As towards Sonic Forces is just a pretty mediocre game. There's nothing that outright makes me hate the game, but there's absolutely nothing that makes me want to come back to it. It's very similar to Sonic Lost World in that way, but out of the C tier games, this is definitely the worst. The avatar was pretty cool though. I did enjoy making my own Sonic character, that was really fun. I wish the game was more focused on fun instead of boring hallway level design. Then we got the one that started it all, Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Besides Green Hill Zone and maybe Starlight Zone, the zones in this game are pretty bad. I made a whole video on it, you can check it out if you want. The game was a good start to the series. It laid the foundation for what would become Sonic 2 and 3, and it's no doubt a fun game. But it was obviously a little rough around the edges, and you can tell that they haven't really quite found their tempo yet, which is okay, no game series starts perfect. But it's no doubt one of the most iconic games on here, and it was very influential for sure. So Sonic 1, you got my respect, but I'm not gonna play you again, I'm sorry. Sonic Adventure 2, this one's a bit controversial for me. First off, I love a lot of this game. The speed levels are great, City Escape, that's great. Shadow, he's great. The story is fantastic. The soundtrack is one of the best in the series, no doubt. But then we got the other 2/3 of the game, the mech stages and the treasure hunting. Honestly, these two are not as bad as people make it out to be, but they're nowhere near as good as the speed levels, which is why it's going right here. I know a lot of people would like to put this game up here, and I know a lot of people that watch my channel really like this one more than Unleashed, but I'm sorry, I just don't see it. The game is definitely overhyped. It has some really iconic moments, and it gave us Shadow, so that's great, but I'm sorry, personally, I cannot put it in S or A. It's okay if you really like the game, but me personally, not one of my favorites. As a matter of fact, I like Sonic Adventure 1 a bit better. Not by much though. Let me just fix that right there. Sonic Adventure 2 is better than Heroes, but Adventure 1 is better than Adventure 2. I felt that Adventure 1 was more cohesive, but I really like Chaos, and it's the first Sonic 3D game if we're not counting this, or that. What Sonic Frontiers was for open world gameplay, Sonic Adventure was for 3D gameplay, and I think it was a good segue from 2D to 3D gameplay. Sonic Mania. I think this is probably the most perfect Sonic game on here. Sonic Mania is one of those games that is very rare in the Sonic series, because there's barely any flaws. The game is basically perfect. Sonic 3. This one is also great. I'm gonna throw Sonic and Knuckles in A tier though. Sonic 3 is the much better half in my opinion, but combined it's one of the most ultimate Sonic experiences out there. And since we're talking about the classic games, might as well put Sonic CD somewhere, which I think is around here. Easily the worst out of the classic games. But it did bring us Amy and Metal Sonic, which is cool. And the time traveling aspect was kinda neat. Nothing but a gimmick in my eyes, but it was unique. That opening intro though, that opening intro is great. Speaking of opening intros, I didn't talk about the Unleashed one. That one is perfect too. These two games have goated opening intros, but CD just not that great of a game. Same thing with Shadow the Hedgehog. This game had a lot of ambition. Sadly, it turned out to be really mid. I got a video about Shadow coming up soon, but basically I think the game had a lot of potential. It just didn't have enough time or resources to figure out the ideas, which was kind of the same issue of Sonic 06 if you think about it. But yeah, Shadow, bit better than 06, still got a lot of issues. And then the last game on here, Sonic Generations. This is a great game to end on because it's probably up here with Mania. It's more consistent than Unleashed, but because of the Sun and Moon medals, I'm saying Generations is better. And I'm super excited about Sonic X Shadow, so that's epic. But yeah, that's basically my tier list. If you want to give me your ranking of Sonic games down below, I'll be happy to read them. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys have a great night or day.
These niggas talking out of their neck. Don't put no coughing out of your mouth. I'm way too paranoid for a threat.